Now, our final session for today, new loyalty, from transactional to behavioural to emotional. Loyalty is changing. Originally, we focused on the amount of value and transactions that we had. But with the digital age comes the option to include behavioural interactions. How do you make sure that loyalty connects to a deeper emotional level? And what role does customer intelligence, AI, and content play in this? Well, to answer these and other questions, I'm joined by a fantastic panel. We have Mark Ritson coming back from earlier, Jason Whiting, the VIP Program Director at Lego Group, and obviously my new best friend, and Alessandro Zanotti from Accenture, Managing Director of Accenture Interactive Europe for Retail and Fashion.
Great. So let's start with a simple one for Mark. Mark, the state of loyalty, how is it changing? And is it more or has it become less important in this environment that's changed over the last 18 months?
It's a great question, Tom. I think loyalty has always been one of the segments, strategies, approaches that good marketers have always depended upon. And I don't think that's really changed too much over the last decade or two. What has changed is the perception of loyalty among marketers. If you look at the 90s, I think it's fair to say we lost our shit a little bit and got carried away with loyalty and brand love and that very specious research report that never turned out to be true, which was, it's cheaper to target your existing customers than recruit new ones. I think we got carried away. The problem is marketers are a fickle bunch. So we sort of leveled it out again and saw, loyal customers as just another good, appropriate segment of the market. And then in the last 10 years, I think what we've seen is the influence of Ehrenberg Bass, which is gigantic. Don't underestimate it. And what they've done is partly good and partly bad, is they've said, look, we've got carried away with loyalty, but they've pushed the idea of sophisticated mass marketing and penetration so far that every Tom, Dick, and Harriet who works in marketing, whenever they're given the sort of loyalty option, goes, oh, no. I've heard from a very famous professor that you shouldn't target existing customers. You should go after everyone, and it's a bad idea. So I think loyalty has always been a massive opportunity. I think the way marketers have looked at it has either been overstated or now understated. And I think that's because we're a fickle bunch.
Thanks, Mark. We're on a seesaw and it seems like we're going on one particular side and hopefully leveling it out. I want to, that's a perfect segue really to Jason. Jason, as you will know from the title of the session, runs the VIP program for Lego. I am a Lego fan. This all belongs to me and my son. But Jason, what does loyalty mean at Lego? How is it managed? And where are you on that customer intelligence journey and using the data to help you run that program?
Once again, yeah, that's a great question. So the VIP program, which is the Lego Group's loyalty program, it's been around for a lot of years, but we're actually looking at it a little bit deeper now. And how do we engage with not just our existing members and high frequency shoppers, but also those people that are buying for gifting occasions and their frequency might be a little bit lower. So while we have a traditional loyalty program, we're actually looking at loyalty as the entire life cycle of a user and of a shopper, which are different for our products. So it's a lot about the brand and how do we bring more value to those moments of joy in a kid's life, right? So how do we have something beyond just that purchase moment, but then really make it that the family and the shopper really want to come back to us as a brand because we have more value beyond that. So it's about smiles and putting smiles on kids' faces. So when we look at how we're working through this today in the company, we obviously know it's more important than ever to have a direct relationship with our shoppers and knowing how there's these massive changes in data and compliance and things like that. So we're really looking at how do we use the full ecosystem, every touch point, whether it's their shopping or they're browsing our site or they're interacting with our content. How do we really start understanding their needs more and more and more? And this really, how do we leverage this data? It really depends, right? So there's traditional research, there's first party data that we're collecting on that experience, but that's only showing part of that user's journey. A lot of it happens outside of our own website or even outside of our own stores. They're shopping in other places or they're watching content on other platforms. So we're really looking at this as how do we get first, like real research into our shoppers, understand, and our consumers, understand who they are, where their passions lie, why they like our brand, and really reinforcing that. But then on the intelligence side, then making sure things like CRM and in areas where we have lots of data in a data lake, we can maximize those touch points. So we're a little bit still working towards this. We've been around for a while, but we're fairly new into this area of how do we start leveraging more AI and machine learning to maximize some of the communication benefits. But we've always been very much around traditional research, understanding our shoppers, surveys, focus groups, market research, really knowing kind of the basics, making sure that we get that right.
Great, thanks, Jason. Alessandro, this is the setup, right? We've got Mark saying, we went too heavily into loyalty and we're trying to balance it back. We've got Jason in a globally recognized brand who are, to use his own words, on a path. They're on a journey. They obviously have started, but there's a long way for them to go to sort of exploit the opportunity. You are helping customers across Europe with this and closer to the cutting edge. So how are you helping customers from a data perspective on delivering either artificial or real intelligence?
Yeah, so there are two ways, in fact, to drive loyalty. The simple one used in the past is actually you give out discounts. You spend a huge amount of money on the customers and they stay with you. But there is another way that is more effective in the long term, not only financially, but is what we call experiential loyalty. So like you get a better experience for the customers. And in order to do that, I think you can only do that if you do two things. You need to be relevant and you need to be contextual in our view. That means that you need to use all of the data, as Jason said, from different sources. Actually, it can be internal sources, it can be third-party sites. And as Accenture, we are building data sources. We're doing data deals to enrich the data in order to know the customers better. We are sure actually that it will be a battle for data in the long run. If you get better data, you get a better loyalty and you get a better performance over time. The difficult thing will be to bundle all of the data around a 360 view of the customer in a data platform where everything sits, and then be able to get actions out of that. And this is where actually talent comes out, and where the data and AI technology helps, because there are so many data. I've been working with a client actually that depending on the mood of the people coming in, you can get, depending on the time of the day, depending on the weather, depending on the money spent and the preferences actually. So we went out with 73 different variables to define actually the best next action for that specific customer on the go, in fact, because it was a travel retailer. So if you understand that, we cannot be human. You need talent to do that, but you need artificial intelligence to pull all the data in and to be contextual in a simple message with a simple discount or message or experience for that specific customer. So that will be the recipe of success for the future in our view.
Thanks, Alessandro. Let's open it up. If in the old world, would be you three would be sitting on a sofa or would be on chairs, and we might even be just leaning into mics. So let's do that now for a second. What do you want to ask each other? What question you got? I've got loads of other questions, but I'm just wondering if you've got any for each other.
I mean, I guess my opportunity to ask the guys is how is the reality of current marketing stacking up against the theory? There is a preponderance of data now, which I don't necessarily completely subscribe to, that says that your best route to success and growth is to go after everyone and not to be too obsessed with existing customers. Penetration, uber alles. I wonder how both of you accommodate that within your own approaches. Because when I talk with most CMOs, they're either believers in the Church of Ehrenberg Bass, or they're continuing with loyalty programs and a focus on their loyal customers. So how do you guys find it at the coalface at the moment? Because there's a lot of talk, but it'd be good to get your perspective.
Let's go to Jason.
Yeah, and you're spot on. I mean, from my standpoint, what we're doing is we're focusing on both ends. You get all the data at the bottom of the funnel, and you can kind of just go back to that same well, but it's going to run dry, right? So you need to make sure that you're offering something at the front end. And at the top of the funnel, we make sure that we start that journey and nurture that to drive the loyalty. We can't just start with loyalty. And I feel like this is also part of the challenge, especially in our industry, for acquiring that data and making them, trying to use AI to make the decisions for us is, we're a very cyclical industry, right? People are buying on occasions and gift giving and things like that. That is a lot of the toy industry. Kids, their views and their passions, they change like on a dime, right? So the data you have, you won't necessarily have all the data to make a decision on what that one child's going to be into. And if you don't know what they're doing outside of your own channels, then that's even worse. So think of somebody might buy a Star Wars set within our own channels, and we automatically start bucking them in as a Star Wars buyer. But lo and behold, outside of our channels, they're buying City and Friends and everything else. And that next best action might not be the right action for them, which is why we're trying to do more traditional research on our members, actually asking them zero-party data. What are you doing? What do you like? What's your interest outside of here? And making sure we're nurturing the new people coming in, and we're having offerings that can help lead them into that funnel. Once they're in, I absolutely agree. Like at the bottom of the funnel, maximize the communication timing, make sure you get that right, the next best action. But it's not as easy as just saying, oh, we have a load of data and we can automatically predict that. It's going to vary depending on the user.
Alessandro, what's your take on Mark's question?
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think I'm working a lot on I would say how to organize for be successful with data, and because I think that a lot of companies are back to reality. Actually, we're still very fragmented from an org standpoint, and this is one of the things actually that prevent the use and the bundling of the data. So I see, as an example, actually, I see many companies that are structured with one team that is taking care of the acquisition, and one team that is taking care of the loyalty, or one team is care of retail, digital channels, social media channels. So from an org standpoint, actually, like a data transformation and to drive loyalty actually requires actually to work in a more coordinated way, and you need to reshape actually the governance actually of the power around of data. There is a battle for data as well. So where the data unit sits is very relevant actually to really drive the performance. But at the same time, we see in the market, there is this threat in the market, like the cookie policy from Google actually changing. And so it will be more complex actually to work with them. So I guess what we see as a trend, back to your question, Mark, is actually a revamping actually of loyalty. Also because on the other side, I work in retail business, and a lot of companies are realizing that they need to monetize the customer base differently. So if I reach the data, then we're not selling in reality the data on the customer, but they're doing two things actually. A lot of players are playing a media as a media company. So we're launching divisions actually to monetize the traffic they have on the site, retailers. And at the same time, a lot of companies are launching what is called a marketplace strategy, where actually they monetize the customer base not only by selling their goods, but by upselling goods from others as well, becoming a merchant, let's say like Amazon behave. So two things that they all require actually the ability to work on third-party data to get the customer loyal, also because the value per customer is really the focus today, especially in this COVID period where the rules of loyalty are slightly changes, and several customers took the chance to try different sites online, offline. And so it's really a battle for loyalty is now actually back. Here we are.
So, Mark, you've opened a huge can of worms there. There's a little thread, a new thread, apart from the marketplace. There's a new thread I want to ask you about, which was borne out in those last answers, which is content. Content created by brands and content created by consumers. How important is that, and how does that play in the loyalty game, and how are you leveraging it or struggling with it? Mark, I'd like to go to you first.
Yeah, I think it is a key question. I mean, there's a couple of plays here, right? So one is just allowing the content between brand loyal consumers to kind of to spark into life. And there's nothing more beautiful than when two loyalists, wax lyrical about your brand while you effectively are doing nothing, and ideally while other people are watching. So there is a beautiful, far from the periphery of traditional didactic communications moment where properly organic content between properly loyal customers does indeed take place. My own bias towards loyalty is one that we rarely talk about, which isn't actually immediately fiscal at all. For me, the first place whenever I've done big jobs on brand revitalization or brand strategy is to recruit loyalists and find out why they love the brand. It's a deliberately unrepresentative sample, but I've always found that they carry within them lots of insights that we can then take and potentially spread out to the rest of the market. So yeah, content between loyalists, great, but also the content in the form of the intelligence I can take. There is no greater insight, in my opinion, in the universe of brand data and brand intelligence than loyalists explaining why they're loyal to a brand. It's the purest of the pure insight when it comes to understanding why a brand is, what makes a brand special. So yeah, in that sense, I do think, other than just we can make money from loyalists and it's easier and cheaper, their insights and their content that we can take from them in the form of intelligence is one of the most precious assets. And again, the problem is marketers are being trained to always look for representative scientific samples, which definitely has its place. But the unrepresentative, outlier, massively loyal, we all have, every brand has customers who are completely mental about a brand, right? They're a small group, but in that group, there is enormous insight for the mainstream. And I think we often miss that point.
There are obsessives when it comes to Lego. How do the obsessives and how does content, either user generated or from the incredible brand that is Lego, that's giving us so much content, how does that work, Jason? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I hate to use the term obsessive, but they're just very big fans, and a lot of the people in the organization are huge fans, and they create massive amounts of content, and it's something we really lean into and try to support as much as we can. These fans, even seen by like the success of Lego Masters, shows that there's a desire for people that even aren't these diehard fans to see this content and be inspired by it. So it's something that's really important to us, and we really lean into it because Mark's 100% right. Like fans talking to fans are going to be your biggest advocates, and the real multiplying power here is the fact that not only are they talking to themselves, but they're inspiring others. They're talking to others, and it's something we see. Within our own program, we see those people who have the highest propensity to give Lego products as gifts tend to be the fans that are they love the brand themselves, they love the product themselves, and they want to share that with others. That's a loyalty it's inherent in that culture that's not necessarily driven by us as a group, but we definitely want to support it because these are our loyalists.
Thank you, Jason. Alessandro, you spoke about the channels being separate and trying to coordinate them together, and one of them you were talking about social media. That's probably that's a traditional channel for content creation, if I can use social media and traditional in the same sentence. How are brands best leveraging that content and working out what content to use, and then how are they leveraging the UGC, the user-generated content, effectively?
Yep. So it's a very good question. Like there are a couple of things I would like to touch. So what I see in the market is that most of the clients are getting organized for content, let's say. So content was left a lot to third-party agencies, to other players, and to the local markets. If I look at the top players I'm working with, they're all getting organized to get coordination at regional or global level on the content. And I have to admit, many of them with us, some of them are building content factories. So that's a business we're investing a lot in to produce, because they realized actually that produce the best content and relevant content for the different audiences is key to drive up loyalty, but also to drive up other factors like the open rate for mails or the outcome of an advertising campaign actually online. So content is key not only to convey your brand image, but also to improve your digital performance and improve the loyalty. Because if you want to be really contextual, you need to play with the right content to the right audience. And that's not a simple thing. So the ability to produce, I would say, the content in different options, like the background, the coloring of the people, the style of the things, I think is more and more important actually to be really personal with the different audiences. I can mention one example. We worked with a car company, and we realized that the advertising, the car actually needed to be different colors and different style for the different geographies, but also the background and kind of weather you have been showing actually to the different audiences had to be consistent with the weather. So realize it is raining in that specific case, and you'll be showing like a car with a lot of sun and things. People actually, they were getting angry out of that. So the click rate was very limited actually. So like you had to show a background that was really contextual and with that. So like that's an example actually of the ability of the content to really drive and to change actually the performance of the digital advertising and of the quality and effectiveness actually of the messages to the different audiences. And it's not easy. And this the other trend I wanted to tell about is actually in order to optimize the cost of producing a huge amount of content, because it's exploding actually the amount of digital content that is produced, is to do two things. The first thing is to think already cross-channel. So the best practices are actually producing content upfront that can be leveraged in the different, I would say, media and touch points actually, but with a single production at the very beginning that is able to cover all of them. And the second thing is actually a lot of companies are working on a technology called CGI. That is actually, so like the content is digital since the very beginning actually. So like we're working with fashion players where actually the model is an avatar, is a virtual model. Actually, and the clothes as well and the accessories actually, you don't go through photo shooting, you design actually with CAD, and then actually everything flows directly in digital to the advertising. And that's a very good way through CGI technology actually, not only to show high quality of the content, videos and images, but also actually to cut off on the cost as well, because you don't go to physical with like a sampling and a collection. You go photo shooting and then you send it around, but everything is digital upfront and still digital actually when it is marketed actually. And by using CGI actually can really drive the next generation of personalization actually for the users as well. So like if I realize an audience actually is more likely to buy like a red dress because I don't know, in that region specifically is red, it would be red, and in other geographies it will be different colors actually. And this is driving incredibly actually the performance. Like quality content can drive up to 30% actually the open and a conversion rate for a campaign. So like it's incredible the amount of business that you can find through optimizing the content for the specific moments in time and audiences, in fact. Yeah, so thank you.
Great, thank you. And we've come to the end of our session. I hope you're loyal to come back. I think we've been on a bit of a journey, haven't we? We've been on well, we're all sitting over on one side, just mining away at the same customers, and Mark said that was dangerous, and we all, I think, agree that that's dangerous. We've got to spread, but we probably don't want to just be targeting everybody with everything. We then went through Jason's journey of where he is now, in the thick of running the VIP program for Lego, but considering the wider business and taking them on their journey of how they're starting to use more and more insight, both traditional and data-driven through behavioural, of what they should be doing next for their customer. And then we got to Alessandro and he gave us some examples, some real-world examples today of brands that are exploiting AI to increase performance of campaigns. I think what my sort of final take on it, and the thread that I have heard through all, is that it's still the experience. We've moved from this transactional world of loyalty. We're now somewhere between the behavioral and the emotional step, and where there's lots of things we can do to keep those customers coming back and back. So thank you for your time, gentlemen, and I hope you join us again for another session.